Hello and welcome to Linesniper Fight Night. I'm your host, Dave Milhouse. Today we're talking UFC on ABC2, live from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada at the UFC Apex. We're getting some afternoon action. This starts at noon Eastern. I got my man Dan Levi from Atlanta on the horn with me here. We're going to start with the main event, Marvin Vettori, Kevin Holland. Welcome to the show, my man. Why don't you take us through the main event?
Well, firstly, it's good to be on here with you. Always a pleasure talking fights. And, man, I think it's one of these situations where Marvin Vettori is really coming into his own. I mean, he broke into the top 5 with a big win over Jack Hermansson. One of the biggest concerns we had with Marvin's always been about, his cardio because he pushes such a heavy pace. But he went out there, won a 5-round decision, answered a lot of questions. And with Kevin Holland, he definitely let a lot of people down in his last fight. And it's one thing to lose a fight when you give it your all, but I still kind of feel like he just, effed around in there instead of really, when you're coming off multiple, performance bonuses, you're on this 5-fight win streak. Everybody's telling you, oh, you're going to fight Adesanya. I think his head kind of exploded a little bit. He was acting out a character. He was saying like, there's no chance I'll lose to Brunson. Once you start saying stuff like that, like there's always a chance, man. This is MMA. So I think he just kind of lost his mind, kind of like Dana said. And in this fight, I expect a better performance from Kevin Holland. I mean, if you hear his pre-fight interviews, he sounds like he's taking this serious. He said he heard Dana loud and clear about, the criticism, and I think he's taking it more seriously because, I mean, the guy has always been talented. Like, my issue with Holland was never about like his skill set. Like, I understand his takedown defense ain't the best, but his jiu-jitsu is pretty damn good. And then obviously he can knock people out as well. It's just that, big mouth, that the whole big mouth thing, he plays around too much. So that being said, my man, even though I do expect a better Kevin Holland this weekend, I kind of think this is a tough matchup for him because Vettori can kind of out physical him here. It's just that my issue with Vettori, because look, we're talking about a minus 350 line. If we were talking to pick 'em, it's we don't have to discuss every single factor. But when you're talking about laying minus 350, I got to bring everything up. And it's like Marvin gets hit a lot, man. Marvin has no issue blocking punches with his face. He's gassed out in fights in the past. So there are some concerns, and Holland is a talented guy. That's why I'm not rushing to the window to lay, minus 350, minus 400. Look, I can understand if you took it, minus 230. I get that. But minus 400, it's honestly a dog or pass situation, despite me picking Vettori to win a decision.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Vettori would be the pick to win it simply because Holland just has this huge hole in his takedown defense, and basically anybody that wants to have a grapple-heavy game plan against him in the top 10, top 15 is probably going to have their way with him. But Vettori doesn't have the best fight IQ or just like maybe IQ in real life. This guy's an absolute hothead. He's been going mental in hotels and stuff, getting hammered, talking shit. He just doesn't come off that professional or smart to me. And then he says in his interview here, even though Brunson laid out the clear path to victory, he said, hell no, I'm just going to do me. He thinks he's going to go out there and outstrike Kevin Holland. I don't think he will. So for as long as this is on the feed, I mean, I think Holland's a very live dog. If Vettori doesn't even shoot one takedown, he's probably going to lose this fight. So this is an interesting one where I think the MMA world is very, what have you done for me lately? And Kevin Holland, we know what he did lately. A couple of weeks ago, like you said, against Brunson, just embarrassed himself. The stock on him plummeted. And I do think the stock on Vettori might be a little bit high because beating Jack Hermansson, it sounds pretty impressive, but Hermansson also has holes in his game. He's not the greatest striker. Vettori's a decent wrestler, and it was just enough stylistically to give him an edge against Hermansson. And it was a pretty close fight, but he deserved to win it. He looked good. But the striking of Kevin Holland is really good, and he's got a 7-inch reach advantage, and he's sitting there at about a plus 280. I mean, I can't back Vettori at these numbers. It's a numbers game. I would say he's a more complete fighter, and he should be the favorite. But I think at this minus 350 price tag, it's overvalued. Honestly, I think the value is on Kevin Holland here, but he's got that huge problem. Like I said, the clear path to victory always there. So I'm ultimately looking to pass. I think if the line gets a bit higher, you might see me on Kevin Holland. But yeah, it's dog or pass situation for me as well, bro. So
Yeah.
co-main
And
event. Arnold.
just real quick,
Sorry,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off, brother. But
No,
man,
no worries.
I think you broke that down really well. And one thing I want to add to the points you were making is that um, Brunson is known for his wrestling. I mean, this guy is a USA wrestler. He's D2, D3, maybe even D1. I'm not sure, not to disrespect Brunson, but I'm not sure his exact wrestling credentials, but he's D something wrestling, right? He averages more takedowns per fight than Marvin Vettori. Marvin's not always out here shooting takedowns, you know. Marvin, like you said, he likes to slug. So now, don't get it twisted. He comes from a great camp. You know, he does train with Master Cordero, King's MMA. They have to have been watching the tape and notice, like, hey, let's mix some takedowns in there. But the question is
You
how
have to
many,
think,
you
right?
know? The question is
Yeah, I
how
mean, is
many,
it
you
going to
know?
be enough? There's 5
Exactly.
rounds.
So
If you're going to stand
I'm
and bang
intrigued
for
by this
3 of the
fight.
5, it's scary, right? Like, it's super scary. If this
I'm
was just a
intrigued.
kickboxing match, Kevin Holland might be the favorite. So Vittori needs to implement a smart game plan. He can't just think he's invincible and he's this wild man, you know, like he's kind of out of his mind, like I said, flipping out in hotels and stuff. I don't know if he's all there. So he might not actually implement a good game plan. We'll find out actually. This will tell us a lot about his fight IQ, I think. You know, you can make a note on this for the future. Co-main event, Arnold Allen, Sadiq Youssef. I do like a side on this one. How about you kick it off again, and I clean us up and get us home.
Man, I absolutely love this fight. I mean, listen, it's my two favorite featherweight prospects. I mean,
Yeah.
Sodiq Yusuf's a guy who, you know, I had him on my show Half the Battle before he was even in the UFC. Like, I've recognized this talent since day one. I mean, the guy, I've bet on him in, I think, every single UFC fight. He's just, you know, firstly, you know, we can talk about all the athletic traits, but like, let's talk about the actual fighting skills, man. I mean, this guy's out here setting up his jab. He's got the calf kicks, his counter, his pull right hand is one of the best in the game I've ever seen. And then his ground game, because it's always like, okay, but what's his weakness? But the ground game, I mean, he's out here Kimura sweeping Andre Fili. So here's the weakness with Sodiq, though, because every fighter has a weakness, right? Like, there's not a single fighter on planet Earth that, you know, if you're in the video game, you're giving everyone rankings, you know, you're putting the striking at 99, the grappling, you know what I'm saying? Not every single thing is going to be in the 90s. So with Sodiq, I think maybe his durability. So here's the thing, like, I do see him get wobbled in a lot of fights. I have seen him get knocked out before. However, he's in such tremendous shape that he can recover just like that. So my only concern is that, look, he's going to come out here. He's going to swing bombs at Arnold Allen. And firstly, let me talk about Arnold Allen, too. Arnold Allen, I've made so much money off him. I love Arnold Allen. Like, Arnold is one of the most underrated featherweights. And I was kind of hoping they were going to do the Arnold versus Jeremy Stevens fight so Arnold could go out there, win that easy 30-27. Sodiq versus Edson, that's a good test for Sodiq. So, but I mean, don't get it twisted. Sodiq versus Arnold is gonna be an amazing fight. So I'm happy it's happening. So I think it's a matter of, you know, the precise, clean boxing of Arnold Allen versus that Nigerian horsepower of Sodiq Yusuf, man. So it's a tough one. I actually do think Arnold Allen has the cleaner hands here. But I kind of think that Sodiq might be able to kind of not bully him, because you don't just bully a guy like Arnold Allen, but just kind of have the more impactful moments and maybe even get the better of a grappling exchange or two, possibly knock him out. But I'm not going to bank on that, because like, you got to understand the kind of respect I have for Arnie. Like, I think that he's serious, man. These are literally my two favorite featherweight prospects. Like, it's just that I've always thought of Arnold as like a future top 5 guy. And then I've always thought of Sodiq as maybe a future title challenger, maybe even champion. So I slightly rate him higher. So I'm going to pick him here via decision. But I think that this is going to be an all-time battle, man. I think it's going to be a serious fight.
It should be really good. And I do like both prospects myself. Make good money on both of them coming up here.
Yes, sir.
But where I find the edge is in volume. Sadiq is landing 6 strikes a minute, and Arnold Allen's only landing 3.2. And, you know, Sadiq has done this against a better strength of schedule. Now, mind you, neither of them have like a super good strength of schedule at all. But I do think Andre Fili is the best fighter that either of them have faced. Sadiq looked pretty good against him. So I'm going to have to assume that if you can land this kind of volume at 6 a minute on the better competition, you should be able to get a strike count ahead of what Arnold Allen does because he's only landing 3. And this is against guys like Gilbert Melendez, Lentz, Rinaldi. Like we're not talking about good strikers. Americani, that was a little while ago. But his striking's got better, but it wasn't very good back then. Yeah, I do like Arnold Allen. Don't get me wrong, but I do think the value is on Sadiq Youssef. I made this line around minus 200. He's got the power. His hand speed's faster. He's got more volume. And I think the market truly believes that Arnold Allen has an advantage in the grappling. And I disagree. Sadiq's just got that kind of strength that allows him to pop right back up if he goes down. You mentioned his Kimura reversal there. That was beautiful. I think the guy's well-rounded. He hits hard. He's got the calf kicks. He mixes it in, like you said. But hand speed and volume is enough, I think, to take this on the scorecards. And if anybody wins inside the distance, I think it's Super Sadiq. So, yeah, I'm happy to take a bet on him. And, yeah, I do think there's a reasonable edge in this co-main event. Should be a great watch. And whoever loses this fight, there's a good chance that you find some value on them in their next fight because – in the what have you done for me lately business, we find all the time that when you lose to a good fighter, people just think you're no good. And unfortunately, somebody has to lose. Often, good fighters fight good fighters, and there's no reason to undervalue them, especially a guy that loses to Sadiq. So if that does happen, Arnold Allen will probably end up back on my bet list because that's just the way these things happen for me. Sam Alvey, Julian Marquez. This is a weird one to me. I like Sam Alvey a little bit here. I think volume-wise, it's pretty similar. Sam has spent some time at 205 where he was undersized, and what we learned is he can eat some shots from some really big boys. Now he's coming back down to 185 against a guy who's behind in almost every fight, and then somehow pulls it off when he does. Julian Marquez is okay. He's not that sharp. I'm a little bit confused as to why he's such a large favorite. But Sam likes to spend too much time backing up just looking for counters. And, in a really close fight, judges tend to reward a little bit of pressure. So I'm not rushing to the window for Sam Alvey, but I do have a problem with the favorite here. I think he'll bust a lot of parlays. They're the same size, both 6'2". Alvey actually has a reach advantage. All the tape I've watched on Alvey, he's never even been close to the same size as the guy he's fighting. Here he's actually a little bit longer and just as big. He's a bit thicker. I think he throws harder punches. He lands 4% more accurately. He's got a 3% better defense. He doesn't have a positive strike differential, but again, we're talking about guys like Span and Kroot and even Jung. Patolo's probably the best win by far for Marquez, and he was really just getting his ass kicked until he got that submission late. So I'm not that impressed with Marquez. I think his latest loss with Miley Cyrus is probably just falling off a cliff now. If Sam Alvey beats you, that's pretty much the end of your being cool career. And I do think Sam Alvey's live here at about plus 165. How do you feel about this fight? Am I a little bit out to lunch? I know Sam's getting old. Marquez is kind of coming up. Is it time for Marquez to, take a big step forward here?
It's tough. It's really, really tough because it's like on one hand, the blueprint to beat Sam Alvey has been laid out since his UFC debut against Tom Watson, which is all you got to do is just throw more volume than him, leg kick him, stay on the outside, and you're winning that decision guaranteed. It's just, Sam Alvey, he's a vet. He's got great takedown defense. He's got nice counters. And from time to time, he'll come out here and he'll surprise you. For example, he came out there and he surprised me his last 2 fights. I thought Ryan Spann was going to steamroll him. I thought Dawoon Jung was going to steamroll him, and he still had a little bit of life left in the tank. So, and one thing I got to say about Marquez, I do disagree with you slightly on his best win being Patolo. I kind of think his best win is Phil Hawes. However, I agree with all your points that it's Marquez, it ain't the prettiest watching Marquez fight, man. I mean, that fight with Patolo, that was more about what Patolo did wrong than about what Marquez did right. I mean, Patolo kind of did what we refer to on Half the Battle as pulling a stunt, in that fight. He was in clear control. And it's just one of those things where, like you said, Marquez doesn't really have the volume to come out here and do that. Actually, it's Sam Alvey who's landed more strikes in his last 2 fights than Marquez. So it's tough because it's like at the end of the day, it's like, but am I backing Sam Alvey at this point in his career? So on one hand, he's he's lost his last 4 fights, or at least hasn't won his last 4 fights. On the other hand, his back is against the wall, and he's a vet, and sometimes these are those most dangerous spots, and he's the underdog too. So I see the case for both. I really do. Like, on Marquez side, the blueprint has been laid out. All you got to do is follow the exact blueprint to beat Sam Alvey, and you win this fight. And with Alvey, it's like, you're a vet. This guy's not that good. Capitalize. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a dog or pass situation or a favorite or pass, because I understand both sides here. But I'll go with you. I'll go with Alvey. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, slight value anyway. Maybe Marquez wins, but it feels a little bit closer to a pick 'em to me. Here's another one that is.
It's just this. It's just that, like, when I look at, like, like this game long term, right, and I see a guy like Sam Alvey, I'm thinking, okay, long term, if you bet against him every single fight, you're gonna come out on top. So it's like, do I abandon that strategy now just because Julian Marquez isn't that good, or do I stick to it because long term it's a winning proposition? That's kind of like the dilemma I have right now with this fight.
I think you got to take it on a fight to fight basis, but I mean, sometimes if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But there is one thing to consider here. Guys like Maki Pitolo are 170, welterweights coming up to 185 to fight Marquez and just mop the floor with them. Let's be honest. Alvey's coming down from 205. He's been hit by trucks, and he's got a good chin. He's not going to have any fear of Marquez power. He's got good counters. Yeah, I think it's going to be a very close fight, but I wouldn't want to be laying chalk myself. So on to the girls here. Nina Ansaroff, Mackenzie Dern. This fight's pretty close to a pick 'em, and it's another one I'm not so sure should be. I don't understand all the hype behind Dern, I guess. I go through the numbers. Nina's the better striker. She's landing, 1.3 a minute more than her opponents. She's fought pretty good competition. Mackenzie Dern is about even against horrible strikers for the most part. I wouldn't say horrible in Cypher. She's an okay striker, but she's too small for the weight division. Amanda Ribas, we found out, ain't that great. Randa Marcos can't strike. Jandaroba can't strike. Cooper can't strike. And yet she's not outstriking these girls. Now, she's world-class jiu-jitsu. I understand that. But with a 5% takedown accuracy against a vet who's fought great competition, had no trouble, wrestling with Claudia Gadelia a couple of fights ago, I find it kind of hard to believe that Mackenzie Dern gets this to the ground long enough to, for it to be threatening. And so Nina Ansaroff, or is it Nina Nunes now? I'm not even sure. It depends what site you're on. Ansaroff is the veteran here. I don't know why the market's so low on her here. So I do believe there's value on Nina. And since, she doesn't knock anybody out and she's very unlikely to submit Dern, I'm looking at this decision prop. You can get it around plus 175 on some sites, and I feel like that's quite a bit off. Maybe you can talk some sense into me here, because the market really likes Dern, and I just don't see it.
Another tough one, because it's like, okay, on paper, Nina is definitely better than Dern. Well, not in every area. I would say Dern's got better jiu-jitsu than Nina. Let's put it this way. You're betting on Nina Ansaroff and Mackenzie Dern takes her back. I know you ain't going to be feeling too comfortable about that, you know what I'm saying? Or any submission attempt, period. So where Nina has the advantage, I'd say her striking is cleaner for sure. She's got a great calf kick game, and she's also got some underrated takedown defense, a good get-up game to go along with it. She's training with the right people, no doubt about it. I will say this, Dern, sometimes the striking technique ain't the prettiest, but she does have a little bit of power. I have seen her drop multiple people, so that's at least because power can count for a lot in the ladies division. So that's one thing to know. Like, sometimes power can override technique, and she has been, making strides with her striking in terms of, working with Jason Perillo now. He used to be the coach of, UFC champions Bisbing and BJ Penn. So, it's just good people to surround yourself with. So I think we're going to see an improved Dern. It's just my question marks about, Nina Ansaroff having a kid. And it's like, okay, I look on IG, she's in fantastic shape, but I've noticed that a lot of the women that have kids, their first fight back, they actually kind of lose. Who knows? Maybe Nina breaks that trend here. But at the same time, it's like Nina is overall, if she can stay away from this grappling realm, because here's the thing, Mackenzie's takedowns ain't the best at all. but Mackenzie is one of these ladies that can, like, pull guard and sweep and lull you into fighting her fight. That's what you got to be worried about. And also, what kind of where's Nina at, considering she just had a kid? This is her first fight back, 2-year layoff, all that stuff. So I'd say Nina's the better fighter, and at the end of the day, I do like to take the better fighter. But I kind of understand a case for people, taking the shot on Dern. She's had 4 more fights since the last time that Nina fought. She's been making improvements every time. So, because, like, for example, I thought that Ribas fight and that Cypher's fight, I thought it was pretty ugly, the striking there. But then I thought the Verna Jandiroba fight was, like, kind of a step in the right direction, starting to kind of clean up the technique a little bit. Let's see what she does this time, right? With a little bit more time to train. So, yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see how this one plays out. I'm going to personally stay out. I'll lean towards Anzarov, but let's see what happens.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. Yeah, Mackenzie does look like she's getting better fight to fight, but having a good striking battle with Verna Jandiroba doesn't tell me as much as I think I need to know to get off Anzarov here. So on to the next one, Mike Perry, Daniel Rodriguez. This is sure to be a banger. I'm having a lot of trouble capping this one. I think the line's basically right where it should be. If we get, a good version of Mike Perry, he's definitely a live dog. If we get the Mike Perry that seems to be a little bit distracted in life, not taking his training so seriously, I mean, this guy's out of control, right? His rap sheet is so long, I can't believe he's still in the UFC, and somehow it just stays under the radar. But he seems like a pretty troubled youth, and martial arts is about discipline, and Mike Perry doesn't even know what discipline is. So, I mean, I can't back him. He feels like a live dog, but I don't think I can back him in this spot, given that we just don't know how serious he's taking it. Someone who is taking this seriously is Daniel Rodriguez. He's looked good. This guy looks pretty good. I mean, what can we say? But yeah, this looks like a pretty close fight on paper. So value possibly on Mike Perry, possibly the line's good. I can't trust Mike Perry. Do you feel any differently about this one?
This is a tough fight to call because it's like, I bet on Tim Means on that last fight against Mike Perry, and I cashed, but Tim Means was also the underdog in that fight, right? Mike Perry is the underdog here. And if I sat here and looked you in the eye with a straight face and told you that Mike Perry did not make me sweat every single second of that fight, especially that first round when he takes him down, takes his back, the last thing I'm expecting, and then every stand-up exchange, Mike Perry throws heat. That being said, similar to Sam Alvey, there's a blueprint that's been laid out on how to beat Mike Perry. And Daniel Rodriguez, on paper, he's this long boxer, he's got the volume. So he's got, some good things going for him in terms of how to beat Mike Perry. It's just that Mike Perry can show up from time to time, man. Mike Perry's been in there with some legit competition. I mean, he had a serious fight with Vicente Luque. I mean, one judge even scored it for him. It beat Alex Cowboy, beat Paul Felder. I mean, knocked out Danny Hot Chocolate. Like, he's been in there with guys. And also, when you talk about, like, which version of Mike Perry is going to show up, which is a fantastic question. So usually I don't like to talk about which version shows up because sometimes I feel like that discredits the opponent. But in this specific case, I think you're so right. So here's what I want to say about that. He did this camp at MMA Masters, which, like, last year on Half the Battle, I said was Gym of the Year. They've been producing a lot of great talent, and they got Miguel Baeza, they got Colby Covington, they got some serious fighters in that gym. So for Mike Perry to be, surrounded with those people, I think that's, only going to help him, go in the right direction. He's also a father now. Seems like he's cleaning up his act a little bit. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the stylistic matchup. And I don't know, like, I know Rodriguez possesses the volume and the boxing, but there's been some sketchy moments here and there. Like, I kind of felt like he underperformed in that fight against Gabe Green. I kind of felt like he underperformed in that fight against Nicholas Dalby. I kind of felt like he got knocked out in the first round against Dwight Grant. The follow-up punches woke him back up. He comes back. He knocks Dwight out. Look, he's a tough guy. I'm not debating that. But I've seen a lot of spots where a heavy hitter like Perry can capitalize. So I'm talking myself into it. I'm going to take Perry here for the upset.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a clear dogger pass for me. I just fear that he's not taking it seriously enough. But that is a good point about switching camps. Hey, if this guy's on the right track, Mike Perry at this price is a good bet, in my opinion. So maybe I should try to find some interviews. Sometimes you pick up a little tidbit about how seriously people are taking it. I haven't listened to him talk yet this week, so I got a little bit of time. Maybe I'll get on the Mike Perry train with you.
I
Into the
have, and
prelims,
he
this one's
he
finishing us
actually
off.
he actually sounds like because the last few fights it sounded like, yo, this guy's losing his mind. Like he actually sounded like a little bit more for Mike Perry standards, a little bit more reeled in. So hopefully
Okay.
that translates on fight night.
Yeah, that's what you want to see for sure if you're backing Mike Perry. Jim Miller, Joe Selecki, they're finishing off the prelims here. Look, I like this fight. I like Joe Selecki. I've been backing this guy since he got to the UFC, and he's done nothing short of dominate every single minute since he's been in the octagon. Now, this is quite a bit of a step up here. Jim Miller, obviously a good veteran fighter, decent on the feet, but he's kind of just like he's got one round in him and then he kind of falls apart. Maybe that's coincidence, but he in his last few fights that's certainly the case. And guys like Hot Sauce are beating him, Vince Pichel's beating him, and those are good fighters, reasonably good. But I think the ceiling's higher for Joe Selecki. Joe's, he's been nothing short of amazing so far in the UFC. Like I said, guy's averaging 3.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. So he's getting it one in per round. He's getting a lot of control time when he does get them. Jim Miller, not the greatest takedown defense, 46% over a long career. This will be a big test for him to keep this standing. Joe Selecki, he's averaging 3.6 strikes per minute and only getting hit under once, 0.93. So huge gap there. He's landing 74% while getting hit with 51, or he has a 51% defense, so he's getting hit with 49. And that's a plus 25% on the striking versus expected. So even though he's getting a lot done in the grappling, clinch style striking, he took the back of Hubbard immediately and rode him for like 4 minutes there. He's gaining major control time, but he did the same thing to Wyman, just absolutely dominating him. Tons of control time. Look, I think he can hold his own on his feet, and I think he can garner enough control time to grind out a win on Jim Miller without really ever being in too much danger. So I don't have an issue with this line being this high for a guy with, little experience, I guess you could say. Yeah, no secret. People that know me know I really like Joe Selecki and I like Giga Chikadze, and I've been doing this for I don't know a couple of years before people realized they were good. I think, and it's worked out really well for me. So, in no way am I looking to get off the Joe Selecki train here. Haven't bet it yet, but I really do think there's a little bit of value presented here. Do you feel that way, or is this a clear dogger pass?
It's not a clear dogger pass. I mean, how can it be a clear dogger pass when if Jim Miller gets past the first round, he's guaranteed to lose? I mean, like
Yeah,
since
yeah.
2016, Jim Miller has not won a single fight that has gone past the first round. And Selecki is one of these guys that he's got a level head. He's a guy that obviously he's a specialist. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, very serious there. But he's been making strides in his stand-up. And it's funny because my buddy Robert Hale, I was literally just hanging out with him before we did this show. He was supposed to fight Selecki on the regional scene, and then he actually knocked out the guy that knocked out Selecki, Nicholas Mata, who's actually now in the UFC. So, Selecki's chin has been tested in the past, and, he has been knocked out before, and it was a vicious knockout, by the way. So it's one of these things where, listen, Jim Miller is going to come to fight, especially that first round when he gives it his all. Like, this ain't Matt Wyman or Austin Hubbard anymore, or as we like to call him on Half the Battle, Harmless Hubbard. So I think that this is going to be the hardest fight of Selecki's career. But not only do I think he's going to pass this test, I think he passes it with flying colors. And I think there's a chance that, this might sound like a hot take. I think there's a chance he might actually submit Jim Miller. So, and I mean, we're talking about a guy in Jim Miller who, he was the first man to submit Charles Oliveira back in the day. We're talking about a true legend of the sport, a guy with, I believe, the most fights in UFC history. I'm sure he's got a lot more, notches under his belt. It's Jim freaking Miller, So all respect to the legend, but I'm gonna go with the young gun on this one as well, my man.
Yeah, I do. I do like it. I like that you like it, and this is a great test for him. If Selecki can get through Miller easy, now you can start working your way towards the top 15, where I think he can easily, progress to. And if not, it's back to the drawing board and a lot more low-level competition coming. So this is a big one for him. And yeah, I think he's up for the challenge. Another one with a young guy against an old vet here. We got Bahamondes against John the Bull McDessie. I'm going to kick it over to you. I got a lot of points to make later. I wonder if we're on the same side or not here.
Well, firstly, I give you a lot of credit for pronouncing Ignacio Bahamondes' name correctly, because I know everyone's going with the Baja. The H is silent, so respect, my friend, for putting in that work. Now, here's
I
what I
think
gotta say
you
about this
helped
fight.
me out with that in the pre-show.
We don't gotta tell them
You
about
get the
that.
credit there.
It's
Oh,
all you,
let's
bro. It's all
edit
you.
that out. I got it. Yeah.
Nah, but listen, here's the deal with this fight. We're dealing with a 12-inch height advantage. Wait, sorry. No, sorry, excuse me, I'm fucking up. 12-year age gap, 7-inch height advantage, 7-inch reach advantage for Ignacio Bahamondes. Now, let's lay down all the facts. Makdessi's had, 17 UFC fights. He's been here for over a decade. He's established. He's proven. He's passed the test of time. He's still here today. So got to give him all the credit in the world. However, I think that his skill set has been exactly the same throughout his entire career, which is kind of like a Taekwondo style, kind of stays on the outside, kind of runs away, kind of side kicks. If you run in on him, he does have some sharp counters from time to time, but he can be bullied. He's never landed a takedown in his entire UFC career. In his entire 10-year UFC career, he's never landed one takedown at all. And when you're talking about a guy like Ignacio Bahamondes, so my thing with the Latino fighters is that they fight with so much spirit, they got so much heart. However, some guys make mistakes and some guys don't make this mistake. And the mistake I'm talking about is this. What holds back a lot of the Latino fighters is their training situation. Staying in, South America, the training's just not as good as it is over here. So, for example, you look at a guy like Marlon Chito Vera, and you compare his early UFC run when he was training in Ecuador, and then nowadays, he's out here knocking out Sean O'Malley when he's training in the USA, and plus all the other big wins he's had. So when you talk about John Makdessi's last win against Jesus Pinedo, because I know a lot of people are making the comparison like, hey, he just beat Pinedo, so he's automatically going to beat this guy. The fundamental difference here is that Jesus Pinedo never made that Marlon Chito Vera move to the United States. He kept training in Peru, where, look, I respect their heart and their warrior spirit, but the level of training over there is just not what it is over here. Ignacio Bahamondes moved to the United States when he was 16 years old. He's training with Bilal Muhammad. He's training with PFL middleweight champion Lewis Taylor. He's training with Yair Rodriguez. He's training with all these guys that are going to elevate his game and take him to that next level. And when you're talking about someone who's only 23, 24 years old, you're going to see these big leaps every single fight. And if you watch his career, it's evident. And in the fights he's lost, it's like not even a case of like, oh, we're exposing this big hole in his game. It's more so just like he was kind of green at the time, like maybe he didn't let it go as much as he needs to. And now he's starting to put it together. And I think he's meeting Makdessi at the perfect time. I mean, Makdessi's last fight, like, look, Trinaldo is a beast and the guy that I respect so much. But Trinaldo literally walked him down. And when you're talking about taking an underdog shot on someone, because I know Makdessi is a popular underdog this week, I want someone that's going to fight for my money. Like, Makdessi was literally running away. As soon as he felt the power of Trinaldo, he decided, hey, let me just get my first check and get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me just fight to survive, not fight to win. So I actually think the value is on Ignacio Bahamondes. I think he's going to come out here. I think he's going to starch Makdessi. And I think we might be looking at a new prospect. I'm actually close with Bilal Muhammad and Lewis Taylor. And they don't bullshit me about the guys, that they know the game very well. And when you hear the way these guys talk about Bahamondes, they're like, dude, once this kid hits his stride, he is going to be a problem. He's a 6'3" lightweight, like, and he's got 35 kickboxing fights. He's training in the States. He's only 23. I think we need to look out for this kid, my man, because I've been seeing people like saying like these blanket statements about how, oh, it's another contender series prospect. I even heard someone compare him to Draco Rodriguez, that guy that, lost to Eamon Zahabi. I'm like thinking to myself, if you watch Ignacio Bahamondes and Draco Rodriguez and you felt like they were at all like similar, like even fought this, I'm like, what? Like, how could you even make that comparison? Like, some people are going to be good from contender series. Sodiq Yusuf, Kevin Holland, I mean, Sean O'Malley, Montel Jackson, and then some people aren't going to pan out. And it is what it is. You can't make blanket statements like that. And I think Ignacio is one of the ones that's going to pan out. And I think Saturday morning, I was about to say Saturday night, I think Saturday morning live at the UFC Apex on ESPN Plus, I think he's going to knock out Makdessi in the first round.
Really? That is a hot take, I think. Okay. Well, I'm actually on the other side. I thought there was a decent amount of value on John Makdessi. I'll start with Bahamondes. He looks impressive to me. He's long. He switches his stances lots. Pretty sharp 1-2s, but everyone he's fighting is, so they're not UFC fighters. They don't have that striking defense, or the foot movement, or even the striking offense to compete with them. In that contender series fight, it looked like he had about a foot of reach advantage on that short little chubbo. I can't remember his name, but there's no way that guy should have been fighting in that weight division. He's not cutting weight. He doesn't have the fluidity. He looked like a horrible matchup for Bahamondes, and he was. And he got his ass whooped. And yeah, so they're trying to make a star here. And this guy really could, he really could be something. He does look like the kind of guy that the UFC would get behind because he's a fun striker. And I respect that. But I look at John Makdessi's career. This guy hasn't been outlanded since 2009. All right, sorry, 2012, 9 years. And although he does lose some of these fights,
can I comment?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. But this is a point I forgot to bring up. I look at the stats and I see that it says that he outstruck Trinaldo. I look at the stats and it says he lands over 5 strikes per minute. But then I watch the Trinaldo fight and I'm like, how is that like possible? Like, he literally ran away and sidekicked and like refused to fight. So I just don't buy those numbers. I just don't.
Well, he consistently does it fight after fight. He does like to stick and move on the outside, and it's pretty boring. And it does look like you're running away the whole fight, and you are, and that's where you can get in trouble with the judges sometimes. They gave it to Trinaldo, even though it says Makdessi had 12 more strikes landed. I thought he outlanded Trinaldo, but again, yeah, he was kind of running away the whole fight. But this is a guy who's not going to be outstruck by a guy making his UFC debut too often, I don't think. And so this is a pretty big step up for Bahamondes. There's only 4 fighters in UFC history with over 50% accuracy from distance and 70% defense from distance with 1 hour fight time. That's Chris Cyborg, Cyril Gahn, Pat Barry, and John Makdessi. And not only that, John Makdessi, he has landed 22.3% more accurately than his opponents from distance over his career. And there's only 8 fighters in UFC history who have done that. So by the data, he's an absolute elite level striker. I don't see that in the film. I think he's a decent striker. I don't like his game plan. Like you said, he runs away. But I do think there's value on this guy. He's fought a great level of competition in comparison. He's outlanded everyone he's fought. That includes Cowboy Cerrone, Lando Venata, Yancy Medeiros. These are decent fighters. None of them are great, but they're decent. He outlanded Trinaldo. He smoked Pinedo. I mean, these guys are all at least on the level of Bahamondes at this point in Bahamondes' career. Okay, so for me, it's either dog or pass here. I do think this probably goes over 2.5, goes to decision, and I think it'll be a close decision. Either way, win or lose, I'm not going to think it really means too much. It's going to be how they look in the octagon. And I just think this is probably a 29-28. Either way you slice it, it'll come down to the judges. And I think it's going to be a really close fight. So for me, it's dog or pass. But it's very interesting that you think so highly of this guy. I can't wait to see how he looks here, because if he can look good against Makdessi, then there's a lot of guys in the UFC he could look good against. I mean, I guess we could say it is kind of ugly watching Makdessi run away, but at the same time, he has a 70% defense and a 51% accuracy, and that is among the top in the entire UFC history. So this is a decent fighter who outlands his opponents for what, 13 straight fights now, 12 straight fights dating back to 2012. I
But he
mean,
hasn't won
shit,
12
that's a
or
long
13
time.
straight fights.
No, I know, but he's not going to get outstruck too often, so he basically should win these fights. You could argue. Sometimes you get a bad decision. Sometimes he gets knocked out. Lando Venata knocked him out. Yancy Medeiros won a split decision while McDessie outlanded him by 34. That's a horrible call. He got knocked out by Cerrone when they were in a strike for strike battle. That's back in 2015 when Donald Cerrone was actually pretty good, decent fighter. Yeah, it happens, but he's in these fights with decent level competition, and I don't know. I can make a case. I think McDassie beat Trinaldo because he did outland him. I think he smoked Medeiros. I think that's a horrible call, and he even lost to Alan Patrick by outlanding him by 21. That's another close fight that I'm not so sure about. So he could have a lot more green on his list here, but he doesn't have it, and I'm not going to punish him because the judges decided, because they're horrible usually. Like, actually, as a standard, they're not so good. Every single fight night we have to look at the screen and go, what, like, what was that? At least once, right? At least once per event. So yeah, I think he's a live dog here, big time. And I probably am looking to play him by decision as the highest value available for this fight. But I look forward to seeing what they got, because this is it's going to be very interesting. I like these young prospects when they get tested. I think that's great for the UFC. And yeah, if this guy is as good as he looks against the regional scene, then we have another star brewing, and I think that's pretty exciting. And as we're running out of time here, let's kick it off with the opener: Impa Kasanganay, Sasha Palatnikov. I'm really bad at these. Palatnikov. All right, so I watched some film
Palatnikov.
on this. Palatnikov? Whatever.
Yes, sir. You got it right.
Palatnikov. So Palatnikov, he's okay, I guess. I don't like a lot of the things I see from him. He's a pretty skinny guy. I think he looks a lot like Yakovlev minus some muscle, that type of body. And we know Impa is absolutely ripped at middleweight. He's coming down here to welterweight. I think he's going to look pretty big and pretty shredded in comparison. He hits harder. I think he should be the favorite here. But at these kind of prices, I'm not so interested. So I think the line's probably pretty good. Impa should win this fight, get back on his horse. Should be exciting. Sasha's very hittable. He hits very hard. I think they kick off the event probably Impa knocking him out. But again, the minus 300s aren't really where I'm looking to invest. So why don't you take us through this? Do you have a lean on this fight?
I absolutely do. So let's talk about this Impa last fight against Joaquin Buckley, right? So one of the most devastating knockouts in UFC history. You always question, like, how's someone going to bounce back from something like that? So look, maybe there's a chance that completely ruined his chin, and that now he starts getting touched, he gets wobbled more easily, he gets dropped, because they say once you get knocked out, it's easier to keep getting knocked out. So that might be a thing. However, if that is not a factor here, and firstly, let me talk about that knockout real quick. So when you see a knockout like that, you're expecting the guy on the receiving end, which was Impa. You're expecting a guy like that to be at least unconscious for like 5 minutes straight. It's like one of those scary knockouts where, like, you start questioning, like, is the guy alive? Like, for example, you remember Bisping versus Dan Hendo. You remember Jake Ellenberger versus Mike Perry, like that big elbow. You remember Marlon Moraes versus Aljamain Sterling, right? Those were knockouts where, like, the guys were out for like 5 minutes straight, and you're wondering to yourself, like, yo, are these guys alive? And it's like scary because it goes beyond the sport that we love. It's like, we want these guys to fight and then leave safe and go home to their family. So we don't want to see anyone get hurt. So when you see a knockout between Buckley and Impa, you're thinking, like, hey, that's one of those knockouts where this guy's going to be unconscious for 5 straight minutes. And the kind of shape that Impa is in, literally within 2 or 3 seconds of that knockout, he's already getting up on his stool. So, like, this guy's impressive, man. Like, to take that fucking shot, man, pardon my French, and get back on your stool within 2 seconds, Like they didn't have to take you out on a stretcher. You weren't unconscious for like a long period of time. You were already recovered within a couple seconds. And now you're dropping an additional 15 pounds, which means your cardio's got to go to that next level. My question is, where are those 15 extra pounds going to come out from? But when you hear this guy talk, he just seems so in tune with himself, so focused that he'll find a way to make it happen. And when Palatnikov, look, very tough guy, he's going to come to fight, but he's going to get bullied in this spot. And I see Impa coming out here, probably getting like a 30-26, very, very, very dominant win here for Impa.
Yeah, he seems to have this match tailor-made for him to come back. He's a big, strong guy. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see him on the scales tomorrow morning. If he looks real, real good, I think I'll be maybe having some little fun, putting him in some parlays, because this does look like a get-right spot. Dana's feeding him, an inferior fighter, we could say. Sasha, not a lot going on for him. Almost got knocked out in the first couple minutes of his UFC debut. And in that fight, he was a huge dog. He only really survived because his opponent gassed. So it's hard to even reward him, for looking decent down the stretch and getting some of these numbers. Sasha landed over 9 strikes a minute in that fight, but it was a lack of cardio that made him look that good. He was almost dead at the beginning. And a guy like Impa, I think he's very live for the knockout as well. But if not, yeah, you're right. A clean decision. Maybe it's something to look into in the prop department. But anyway, thank you for joining me. That is it for Linesniper Fight Night. This is UFC on ABC2. It's going to be in the afternoon, 12 Eastern. So make sure you get your bets in, make some money, and get that afternoon action in. Take it easy. We'll see you next time.